I am Peggy from Gardenhouse Studio. Today we're going to be stamping on fabric with one of the best stamps I think to come along in a long time, the IOD Campagne, which is brand new from the early spring release. I love this stamp. So we're going to be stamping on fabric. I had these old black shoppers which I never knew what to do with. They kind of they aren't all that interesting, but they're very heavy duty. And I thought at one point I was going to stamp on them with white. And then today I said, you know what, it would be fun to stamp on fabric and then actually glue the fabric right to the bag itself. So I really wanted to use this stamp, and I'm going to actually be using a couple parts of it, but I'm going to use the big one and the small one. And this is the cross stitch, the little from the Cozy stamp, which was a Christmas stamp, which had a bunch of little cross stitch designs, and I thought it would just be perfect to give this that little farmhousey look. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to stamp a little bit on these cards. These are, they're large postcards, but they're made for watercolors. So they take the ink really well, and you can actually ink your stamp design, and then later on you can go back and watercolor it. So I want to put the chickens on this. So like I said, I'm using, I guess I can pull this out a little bit. I don't have the original front, but I have the back. So this is the back packaging. I cut these and put them in these great the IOD packages for envelopes for your stamps. So this is the back of the stamp, and you can see lots of little farmhouse, really really beautiful detailed ink drawings. Or I don't know what they are. They almost look like engravings. I would call them engravings. Your stamps are going to look like they're engravings. 2 sheets of designs. So I want to use that, and I never can tell exactly which. I guess on this it doesn't matter. These are both the same. They're not really as thick as watercolor paper, and it's not quite as textured as watercolor paper. And I just put extra ink on this ink pad because I'm going to be using it on fabric, so it may come out a little bit too juicy, but we'll see what happens. So I am using this rooster, and he's the smaller rooster on the stamp. And let me see. And you'll see how beautifully detailed he is. And this guy, these chickens are very detailed. I guess they're little French kind of chickens. But there he is. So what I want to do is have him in the forefront. So in order for him to stay in the forefront, I've got to use my mask. And you know the masks come in the package with the stamps, and they are on these blue sheets, and it's nice that they're blue because then you can actually see where they are, and you don't lose as many of them as I used to lose. Make sure he's dried out. I don't want him to smudge. You put the mask over the design that you want to stay in the forefront. Okay, so that's this guy. I want him to stay in the forefront. And then I'm going to take the mama chicken, who has a couple of little chickens hanging out with her, and I'm going to put her right there next to him. And like I said, I just inked this, put some extra ink on this ink pad, so it may smear just a little bit because I really wanted it to be embedded into the fabric. Okay, so I want to just have her be just a little bit over to the side. And this is just watercolor paper, and it's neat. It comes, it just came as a package, watercolor postcards, and they come with envelopes, and you make your own stationery. And there's 2 little chicks we're also going to add to this. Let me take her off. So there she is, and you can see how she's behind him. because part of her stamping is actually on the rooster. And let's wipe that off because that is doesn't dry too quickly, and we actually don't want it drying. I don't want anything on I don't want it on my mask because I want to be able to see through it. And then we have these cute, tiny little chickens, which we're also going to put in the foreground. You don't have to worry too much about them. They're tiny, but cute, super cute. There's that one right there. And then we'll put the one which looks like he's eating a worm. Put him over here next to Dad. And these are so tiny, it's so easy to smudge them. So be real careful when you use those tiny little stamps. It's so easy to move them. And there are our tiny little chickens. And what I like to do on my stationery is just go around the edges, give it a nice framed in look. Not going for perfect here. I like artsy. Give it a nice framed in look. And there is my postcard ready to send. But these are big postcards and they come with envelopes. So what I'm going to do is, let's put this rooster over on the side. That way the mailman gets to see our stamping just hanging out a little. Okay, and then we'll be ready to stamp on fabric. And I'm going to do the exact same procedure. So there's my envelope, and this piece of stationery is ready to send. So what I'm using for fabric is white cotton sheeting. And this is pretty much, I think it may have been like a quilting fabric. It's very thin. It's been washed and dried and then pressed. And I think it might be what would be considered backing for a quilt because it's super thin, but it works really well for this project. As you can see, this is my sample. This is my chicken. Okay, I'm going with the same procedure. Like I said, I put extra ink on this so it looks really dark, and I'm really going to push and embed it into the fabric. Really pushing it through. I think I may have pushed that enough. Let's see how he came out. Oh, he's so cute. Okay, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to find my little rooster mask. I'm going to mask him because I want him to be in the forefront. And one of the things you want to do when you're stamping on fabric is really try to make sure you do not have any ink along these edges because you're pushing so hard into the fabric that the chances of you pushing down and getting the edges onto the fabric are pretty great. So this piece is bigger, so I'm not going to overlap them quite so much, just a little bit. And again, I want to make sure I'm getting all these edges. So what I do is hold the stamp down with one hand pretty firmly and then just press it because you don't want your stamp to move. And sometimes when I was first using the mask, I would forget to really come over here where they overlap and push down a little bit more to make sure that you're getting that whole part imprinted where they connect, so you don't have a shadow there. You'll know when you do it what I'm talking about. And there she is. You see how she's got that little chick on top of her?
Yeah. All very detailed.
Very detailed. I know I was telling them before you came that it's like having engravings. They're so detailed. I'm going to put the other little guy. Oh, I didn't show you how it was embedded into the back. So you can see how by using lots of ink, you're pushing it right into the fabric. That's the back.
Wow.
And then there's this other little guy. And then this little guy over here. Another little chicken. And then what I want to do is, this is part of the Cozy stamp, and it's like a little cross stitch, and I really like it for adding super country feel. So that's what I used on this one, and I'm going to use it here. It just adds a super, I don't know, I guess it finishes the edges, but it also adds a real super little homespun look. So I'm going to put that along here. This stamp, this is, like I said, it's one of the borders from the Cozy, and it's a continuation, so you can line them up so you don't see where they meet. You just have to do it carefully, and I don't always get it just right, but I usually get it good enough that nobody would notice. There's my edge, and I'm going to go ahead and put it along the top too. I love these borders. It's like little frames. This is just a great little detail. Okay, here I go with this guy. Let's see if I got that one good. Almost good. Good enough that no one would notice that it's not perfect. Perfect enough. Okay, so in order for me to attach this, what you don't see is I used a fabric medium. I heated this up after I did it, and I used it just to set the ink. And then I used a fabric medium because what I want to do, I'm going to glue this right on to my bag.
Like a tote bag?
Yep, these are shoppers. We're going to glue this one on. I'll let this one dry a little bit, then we'll heat it up. I'm going to glue this one on, and then we're going to do the big chicken for the back. Okay, so what I am using is a decoupage varnish and glue, which is specifically made for textiles. Okay, so I'm going to decoupage this piece of fabric to this bag. I have already set it with my fabric medium, and I put a piece of cardboard inside the bag because you're going to get it pretty wet. You know, whenever you do anything on fabric, a bunch of it has got to soak in. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to sew it on. Because I've never done this before. I mean, I've done tons of stamping on fabric, and I love doing it. But I haven't glued it down. I usually sew it down. But I thought that maybe a lot of people don't like to sew like I do, so we're going to do it different today. Okay, I'll set that half up. And I'm going to decoupage it right down. But remember that I've already sealed this piece. This isn't the one we just did. I've already sealed this piece before. So I'm sewing it, I'm gluing it on. Liquid sewing, I guess. Okay, I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to do the other side. I don't know if this is shiny. Textile. It just says it's textile, so I don't know if it's going to be shiny or matte when it dries, but I would bet it's going to be matte. Like I said, I've done lots and lots of fabrics, but I've never used this fabric glue yet. I just opened this today, so we'll see how it goes. You always wonder, whenever you're doing anything and you're gluing edges that are straight like this, you always got to do a little extra care along the edges, because somehow those straight edges like to pop up. Okay, so I'm going to just let this dry, but there it is. Glued to the bag, and we'll let it dry and see what happens. Whenever you're doing a bag or a pillow, though, you got to put something inside it, and I'm going to show you to prevent the glue from going right through. And all I do is I use one of my IOD transfer cardboards. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one aside to dry, and then I'm going to show you what I did. Okay, I'm going to take my heat gun. And this, I need to set this before I put the fabric medium on. And I know sometimes the recommendation is that you don't heat set it for 24 hours. I haven't had any trouble heat setting this ink sooner, but I haven't washed a lot of it either. I'm not gonna wash a bag too often. And then I'm going to take my fabric medium, and that's what I'm going to paint on this. It just fixes it. And that's all I'm doing. But you can see, because it's definitely not bleeding at all. So this makes the fabric easy to glue down, and it makes it so that you don't have to worry about it bleeding. It sets it, and I'm pretty sure it makes it waterproof. We'll see though. This is called Pentarp, but I have another one that from other companies. It's just a fabric medium, and it's for working with fabric. So let's say we did, after we this all dried, then you could paint on this. You could do anything you want with this piece of fabric because it's now sealed, and it's going to dry clear just like that one did. So that's what I did to get that one ready to be glued down. We're going to let this one dry, and this will be ready to be glued or sewed down. The fabric medium keeps it a little bit stiff, but definitely still soft and pliable. Not like glue would make it really, I think glue would make it really stiff. Because I want to put the big guy on the back of my little farmhouse shopper, these are almost totally square. I'm going to do the big rooster on the back, so let me ink him up and get him ready. So I'm seeing a little bit of color coming through, but it may be the bag coming through. It's definitely not my ink bleeding, even though these bags were supposed to be able to paint on them and do whatever. I mean, that's what they're for. They're literally craft bags. Ooh, that's a lot of ink on that guy. Well, we'll see how he does. Here we go. And this is still the La Campagne stamp set, and this is the big rooster. So this one is one I just cut around his, I left him on the sheet. That's why he's so dark looking. I left him on the sheet that he comes on. Looking good, buddy.
That is cool.
I must not have left a little bit on him. If you look at this closely, folks, you can see how it's a little beaded. I may not have sanded him. I may not have sanded this stamp. We're always supposed to sand the back of them. I mean, that might not be it, but I'm going to make sure, and I'm going to go ahead and sand it before I do another one. Just lightly sand the back of them with a 220 220 piece of sandpaper. And again, I like this little border. You just have to match it up. It's backwards. It's always backwards. I'm going to do this part now. I'm just using black and white, but I would think that these would be really cool in different colors, even red. I put that one a little off the fabric because his tail is right there at the top. And I could have mitered the edges on these, but I did not. Instead, put this right here. So that is my new mask. Yeah, you have to decide and then just do it. And I'm going to do that other side, which is a little wrinkled, but we'll find a way. So there's my rooster for the back. But I think what I may do for this next one is, here is our glue. I'm going to see what would happen if I would probably use a blow dryer rather than the heat gun. The heat gun doesn't have quite as much air. A little more heat, but not as much air. So I'm just going to do one little section so that I can see how it does. I'm just heating this little section right over here just so I can see how it comes out. You can see the bluish black in the background. That is just the fabric, because this fabric is so thin. Once you heat it, it disappears. That's all I wanted to make sure that the fabric bag wasn't bleeding through, but it's not. It's just because this fabric is so thin. So can you see right here? It's still pretty damp, but you can see that the color is totally intact. No smearing. and you can see how bright these little chickens are. So there you have it. And we will put this big guy, look how nice he looks on this.
Yeah, you filled it right up.
He is going to be gorgeous on this. So those are our projects. So that's it for today. You have a great day.